Hello, this is Luke, and we're back at it like a bad habit. No, wait. We're back with another episode of building an analytics service from scratch. So what are we going to do today? Well, let's just get started with our usual command. Which, let me look at the README and remind myself. So bun run dev, bun run build tracker dev, and bun run demo. And I might actually copy this whole thing here and just put that in the README as well. So I don't have to type it out each time. Okay. Let's go ahead and open up our server now. Dunk. Gotta wait for it to build. Okie doke. And last time we did a little bit of UI stuff. As I recall, one of the main things we focused on was this ugly duckling of a form here that we can use to manage our sites. And just as a quick reminder, sites for Nanalytics are used to separate the analytics events into different buckets. So if you're hosting 3 different sites and you want to see the analytics for each of those individually, that's what you would have multiple sites for. But you don't need to have a separate deployment of Nanalytics for each of those. Okay, so we want to turn this ugly duckling into a beautiful swan of a form. But before we do that, let's actually do some mockups for it. Okay, we have our mockup here, but it doesn't really mock up that aspect of the page. It's just sort of the main page. We have this settings icon. And in theory, when you open this, it's going to pop up a kind of a drawer with this settings in it. And so let's think about what that drawer is going to look like. We'll do this in a separate thing here, not a separate frame, I believe these are called, right? Yeah, frame. Okie doke. So let's think about what we want this to look like. For starters, we know we're going to have multiple sites, potentially. Each of those sites is going to have an editable name and a list of host names. If we go over here, there's an editable name, and then there's a list of host names where you can, add, delete, whatever. And the way it works right now, like if I add multiple sites, they kind of get stacked on top of each other like this, which isn't really what we want. Probably the best thing to do, I wonder if I can copy this. Let's momentarily ungroup this selection here. Let's take these 3 things, group those, and this will be sort of like my reusable drop-down arrow. Then I'll group this selection again. Okay. So we're going to have a site, mysite.com. And you're going to be able to choose, different sites. Okay. This feels a little small. I know it says the text is medium, but I kind of want it to be large maybe there, like that. And then we're also going to have a button next to that that's going to be like new site or something like that, right? Plus site. And then this is probably going to be basically taking up the whole thing. Let's kind of do it like that. Oops. Kind of like that. Okay. And then when a site here is selected, it's going to display the editing site form. let's go ahead and group these together. Okay, and we can group these together. Actually, I don't know if there is anything to group there. So what do we want the form to look like for a single site? There's going to be site name. And we could call this like display name maybe, to make it clear that it doesn't actually impact anything. It's purely for readability. And then in here, we're going to put mysite.com. This is going to be right aligned like this. So there's going to be, you know, kind of a form entry like this. Right? And then we're also going to have a another section of the form down here, host names. And so here we're going to have probably something like this. We're going to want multiple host names. We're going to want a kind of a plus button to add new host names, and then like a minus button to remove them or something like that. And let's maybe color this green like that. And this we can kind of color red. Okay. And so then there's going to be like another one here, which could be, you know, www.mysite.com. Sure. And then there's going to be another button for adding host names. So there's kind of two ways that this could happen. Okay, like that. One is we could have a button where you click plus host name and then it brings up another row and you start typing in it. Or there could be a blank row here and then a plus next to it, if that makes sense. And I don't really know if it matters which we do. For now, let's just kind of do it like this. And maybe we'll put this plus host name kind of on the right here, like that. And then we're going to have some buttons at the bottom of this form as well. So let's actually just sort of copy this here. We're going to have a save button to save our changes. And we're going to have a delete site button, which is going to delete the site. Something like this. Sure. And maybe we could kind of put it like that. Okay. So this is one way we could do it. Now, when we're thinking about these forms, another way we could maybe do it is actually having multiple sites listed and then allowing you to edit them, which might not be a bad option either. But for now, I think we'll just start with this and see how it feels and go from there. All right, let's do that. So in order to do this, we're going to need to go into one of our pages, some page or other. I think here we have our high-level sidebar. So here's where we can put in our site select dropdown and related functionality. So instead of this, we're going to need a select. And it's going to be kind of similar to this select here. So we can sort of copy this, put it over here. And arguably, maybe we should make this a separate component. let's go ahead and do that. Let's make a settings component. And we'll export a settings function here, our functional component. And this is going to have all of this stuff that we're putting in the sheet content, basically. So this whole section here. And, you know, we're going to do something like return. Probably a div. And then our stuff. And we'll need to import these things. And the sites we're going to get from this, use sites, right? And also use delete site and use create site. We will put in our settings thing. Okay. And let's add import, add all missing imports. Okay, so now we've got our sites component, our site settings component. Let's go ahead and put that in here. So we would do like settings. Like that. And up here we can get rid of these two unused hooks, get rid of this unused import, those unused imports. Okay, cool. So if we look at our page now, it should look exactly the same as it did before. Now we can actually start iterating on the settings themselves. Okay, so here we're going to take this select, something kind of similar to this select, right? And let's import that from UI select and then add all missing imports. Looks good. And the set app state as well, we're going to need here. Or do we need that? I don't know if we need that actually, but we might actually need the app state. We're going to need to get the app state. I don't know if we're going to need to set it though. Okay. So we're also going to need a state for what this dropdown is going to be. So we could call that selected site, set selected site equals use state. And by default, this is going to be undefined. Sure. And this is going to be a site ID. Okay. Now, what I kind of want to do here actually is have this default to the app state's default selected site, if that makes sense. So if I default this to appstate.siteID, I still need the undefined here. That way, when we open the sidebar, it should automatically start with the site that we're looking at here selected in the sidebar as well. And we'll have to test that out to make sure that works as expected. If it doesn't, we might need to use a, instead of putting it as a default value, like actually assign it with set selected site, but we'll see. I have this thing in my head that like the use state default value should always be hard-coded, not dependent on some other hook value like app state, but I don't actually know if that's the case or not. Especially since it is sort of just like the initial value and we don't expect the app state.siteID to change while we're looking at this page. So it might actually be fine like this. Okay. So here the value is just selected site, right? And on value change, we're going to set selected site, new ID. And really, this could actually just be like that, right? So cool. And then we have content. You know, we might adjust this a little bit, but that seems like it's about right. And then we want to use the selected site down here. So instead of all this, we're actually going to have a site form. And the site is going to be the selected site, right? And this button here, I probably want to put it actually into the site form, is what makes sense to me. And here we could do selected site, site form, otherwise null. And what are you complaining about here? Oh, that's expecting that. Okay, let's adjust that in the site form itself again. So first of all, we're going to use delete site in the site form. Like so. And we're also going to use sites in the site form, and we're going to load the site from here. So instead of accepting a site, this will just be a site ID. And then down here, we would say const site equals, and we could do like site ID. Sites find s.id equals site ID. And then we could say like if not site, return. So it's just not going to render anything if there's no site. And maybe I'll add a little to do here. To do skeleton error. Okay. And really that should actually be down here, I guess. Because we want it below all of the hooks, ideally. All right. And this I'll also put down here. So, well, it's used here, I guess. So let's leave it here. All right. And then, so we deleted this delete button, but I might just copy that again from my Git history here and put that down here in the site form. Like that. All right. So now our site form is kind of this reusable component. It accepts just a plain site ID. And in the settings page here, then we can, you know, do it the way we have it here. And what's this erroring about? Import type. Yeah. All right, so we don't need the delete site. We don't need set app state. Let's just do it like that. And this should kind of work. Now, the one other thing we might want to do here before we forget is we will, let's just go ahead and do it this way. It doesn't really matter that much. Here, we're going to create site, and then So let's look at our create site function here. It's an async function. It does this await, really, I kind of want to return this data. Return, let's call it new site. We can use a more informative name. Okay, so the reason we want to do this is because we want to get that new site ID in here. And so then we can make this async. And we can say const new site equals await create site. And then we could say selected site or set selected site new site.id. And maybe we could say like if new site.id. Yeah, like that. Okay. And this is complaining about my types because new site here is a response object, which makes sense. What I actually want to do is return await new site.json. And the JSON response is any. So up here, I'm going to declare this as being returning a promise of a site. So now over here, we should know that new site is a type site. Okay, let's make sure that that actually works on the server side as well here. So in the post, or this one here, post API sites, it's returning the response of this. And this is returning star, and it's returning this here. So that seems like it should all work. It should be returning the new site. Okay, and we can give that a shot and make sure it's working as expected. Let's look back at our UI. Give it a refresh just in case. So now if I click this, I've got my site chooser here. And depending on which site I choose, it should be updating the form, but as you can see, it's not for some reason. So why is that? I wonder. Let me just do a quick console.log here. Selected site. Selected site. So say I switch this to this. Let's open up our console here. It does switch the selected site to something else. But the form is not updating. Probably I need this site. I wonder if it's a default values issue. Let's do a little trickety trick. If we do that, key selected site, does that fix it? Yes. Okay, so why did that fix it? This is something that confused me about React for a long time. With this site form, we have this mounted component, right? And so if we look over here, it does this use form hook and sets this default values. And then that just kind of is what it is. Like it's all in this site form component that's been mounted into the UI. If I switch this setting here, it's going to update the props for the component. It's going to potentially run other use effect hooks or whatever. But because this use form thing doesn't automatically rerun when dependencies change, when this site changes, that those default values stay the same, is my impression of what's going on here. So there's probably a way to rework this component so it doesn't have that problem. But a much easier solution a lot of the time is to add a key to the component. And the key, if the key changes, the whole component is unmounted and remounted or whatever. It's recreated basically. And so all of those hooks are run again from scratch in that component. So a lot of times if you're having issues where things are not updating in a component, even when a prop changes, one of the possible solutions is to add a key based on that prop. Especially if the prop is just a simple string like this, it makes it really easy to do. Okay. I don't know if that's considered React best practice or what, but it works fine for me. So let's see what happens if we click Add Site. Well, we get an error, first of all. So part of the problem here, what happened here? So we're getting this error, cannot read properties of undefined reading map. So value is undefined, which in this case is the array of host names. So I could see kind of a couple reasons that might be, which does get a little bit annoying the more I think about it. So say we call this create site function here, right? And let's look at our network. It should have created a site with this post call. And the response has an array of host names, ID, and name, right? And then as soon as that's done, it's going to do this set selected site thing. The problem is this set selected site is called immediately before we actually get the new list of updated sites. My guess is that that's the problem. So if we go back to the site form here, this, let's add a console.log site. And let's do it like this. Site. Kind of illustrate the problem here, hopefully. So if I click add site and go to the console, so we get our site. Okay, what is the problem here? So C39 something, that's the one we just created, right? Yeah. And it has host names as an array. Let's try this. So add site. Okay, so it's selected it fine. ASDF, submit. It's complaining about host names. What is going on with that? I don't know. Let's actually try this first of all. And let's actually just delete a bunch of these sites. I shouldn't have deleted the localhost one. That had all my data in it. Whoops. Oh well. Okay. And this is obviously weird, but let's add a site here. and it didn't select it. We need to select it ourselves. And when we select it ourselves, it works, right? But when we do this step here, it doesn't work. So I'm kind of thinking I might actually move this up here. And I'm curious how that does it. So now, and that's uncommented, yeah. Now if I add a site, yeah, so now we get that error rendered more hooks, which is kind of why I had that down below in the first place. What if I put this up there? No, okay, yeah. Okay, let's put it back where it was. So is there a way to cause this to do something different? What if I set this to values instead of default values? Or what if I set it to a function? I don't know. Let's just try this. Okay. Add site. So that worked. Created my new unnamed site. But can I actually edit it? Does this work? Yeah. Okay, so maybe it should be values instead of default values. Okay, seems fine. That might actually also have fixed the issue that we needed to put this key here for, but I'm just going to leave it in anyway. So probably these, it seems like if the values, if it's dynamic, you should put it in values. If it's hard-coded, basically you put it in default values or something like that. Something like that. Okay. And I should be able to like do that, refresh, unnamed site ASDF. It's got the things. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's also give a little bit of thought to the empty case here. So first of all, when we delete a site, we actually have kind of two things that we want to do here. Right? We want to delete the current site. And we also want to set the site ID to something else, which we kind of can't really do because of it being a prop here. Which does make you think that you almost want this to be back in the parent form, but that makes it difficult to implement our mockup here because we kind of want this delete site to be part of the overall thing. So, you know, arguably there might be a better way to do this, but the way that we're going to do it is by adding an on delete hook. And really we could just do it like that. And then we'll add that as a property to this component. On delete. And it just calls a function that does nothing and returns nothing, or it accepts no parameters, it returns nothing. And then up here, and we can make that optional as well. Okay. And then here we could do like question mark dot. Okay, so up here then we can have something where it's like on delete, we're going to do something. What are we going to do? We're going to select a different site. Set selected site, and we will select it, let's say just the first site in the list, I guess. It doesn't really matter. Sites 0. And we could do like question mark dot 0 or undefined dot ID. Question mark. Yeah. Okay. So it's going to select the first site if there is one, otherwise nothing. Okay. So now if I go to unnamed site 2, delete it, it selects the next one. Delete that, it selects the next one. Or it should have selected the next one. That's odd. Delete me. I wonder, okay, so if that one's already selected, let's do like just kind of a silly approach here. Sites.filter, site.id not equal selected site. So we're selecting the first site that's not the selected site, if that makes sense. So now if I add a site, unnamed site 2, if I delete this, let's add another one and do unnamed site 3. So now we have 3, 0, 2. If I delete 3, it should select 0. If I delete 0, it should select 2. If I delete 2, it doesn't select anything. There's no sites. And up here, we would say no sites available. And we will actually disable this. Where do we disable it? Is that here? Disabled if sites.length well, let's just say if not sites.length. Okay. So now it's like, hey, you've got no sites. It's disabled. It's not even showing the placeholder, which is not really what I expected, but fine. I wonder if there's a way to get it to show a disabled placeholder. Probably is. I wonder. Yeah, there's no read-only. Okay, well, this is fine. And then if you create a site, it appears. So, and then, it does say no sites available now. Huh. But if I close this and reopen it, it doesn't. Almost tempted to do something like this. Let's try this. So if I do like sites.length, then do this business. Otherwise, do just a select item it needs a value. Like that. And just do empty string, I guess. Question mark. Okay, so let's see what this looks like now. If I click this, to clear the selection and show the placeholder. I mean, that's kind of what I want it to do though, but it's not. Let's just try something here. Boo. Okay, it still doesn't show up here. So let's actually undo that then. And we'll just leave it as it is for now. Really, what we could do is actually get rid of this whole select if we don't have any sites, now that I think about it. Sites.length. If so, we'll do some stuff. Which is all of this. Otherwise, we'll do some other stuff, which is something like this. And we'll call this create a site. And then this, we're going to put up here. Okay, something like that. So now if I click this, it just says create a site. When I create one, then we get this other UI. Okay. Cool. So now we can look at the actual styling and stuff. So let's look back at our mockup here. So we want the plus site to be in line with the my site select, right? So one of the ways we could do that, I think, is just with a div class name equals flex row. And then create a site. So now those are in line with each other. And we can add a bit of a gap. Maybe just gap 1, see what that looks like. So now there's a bit of space there. I might do gap 2. And we will also do margin 2. And this select here, we will add here. What is it? Grow. Just grow. So now that's like that, right? And that's kind of in line with what our mockup has. It feels a bit wide, maybe. But that's something that we might actually adjust at the sidebar level itself once we get to that point. And let's actually make this margin 4. Yeah, cool. And this add site thing, I don't really like the black, okay? So I could try a different variant here. What are our options? Default, destructive, ghost, link, outline, secondary. I mean, don't really like that either. I sort of want to add a new variant. But for now, let's just leave it at secondary, I guess. And we could call this new site just to be clear, a little bit more clear about what we're doing. All right. So now we have that. And then in the form itself, we're going to need to do some stuff. Let's also try, so if we delete this, we kind of want to style this button a bit, right? We probably want to give it a margin, first of all. We can give it the same margin of M4. And we might also want to, I wonder if there's a size large. What does that do? Makes it a bit bigger, which is good. And I kind of also want to do like ML8. Or maybe even 12. Just want it sort of in the middle a little bit. I don't know. Maybe not actually. Let's just leave it at 4 for now. Okay. Feels lonely by itself, but there'll be other things added to this this side nav eventually. Okie doke. So now let's look inside our form. And again, let's take a look at our mockup. Maybe we could actually pop this over to the side here for reference. Just kind of like that, and then kind of like that. Yeah, cool. So this field, first of all, we're going to call display name. And, you know, this whole form item, we're going to want a margin on it. This might also be margin 4. Yeah, that feels pretty good to me. And this whole form, we might actually add a margin top of 8 as well, just to give it a little bit of space from the thing above it. Kind of similar like here, there's more space here than there is here. Okay, so then down here for these host names, so this is going to be, you know, I don't know why this isn't a form item. I wonder if it should be a form item or if that's going to break stuff. Does that break stuff? Doesn't seem to have really broken anything. Although, who knows? Let's actually try ASDF, add another one, FDSA. Yeah, okay. Okay. And then this form item, we're going to give class name M4, just like the others. Cool. And this plus host name thing. So this button, you know, we'll call it add host name. And this is going to be well, so let's take a look at this for a moment. So this form item, display grid, so what is the grid? What are we looking at here? Yeah, okay. So I think I should be able to add the right, like, or class name, just align, or what is it, self? Where's my autocomplete? Okay, let's see what Tailwind docs have to say. Tailwind docs, grid align self along the cross axis. I think that's what we want. So it would be like self end, I think. And then if I did a width as well, let's try that. Okay, but I put it there. That's not really where I want it. Still there. What is the grid? That we're looking at here? Yeah, that doesn't work. What about display lock? Does that change it at all? Slightly, but not in a way that I care about. Yeah, not helping. Interesting. So there must be some good way to do this. I wonder if it's a different axis. Like maybe I should be justify start or justify end, maybe. Yeah, okay, that's what it is. So the axis is actually the horizontal axis instead of the vertical axis, I guess. And then if I remove the width, then it properly does the thing. Great. And then in here, we've got this form item here, which I'm going to add a, or maybe in the form control. I wonder if I do a gap too, is that going to properly, yeah, put a gap there. Cool. And this X is going to be destructive variant. Yep, like that. And then this add host name, you can click it, it'll put in the thing. Seems to work fine. Cool. So again, for this add host name, I'm actually going to make this variant secondary, just so that it's not quite as big and bold and in your face, similar to this new site button up there. And now, well, we'll see. Okay. Then we also want to delete site, right? And this is actually going to go, so down here we have like this row, and we'll just make another div here for this bottom row. This is going to have class name flex. flex. And we're going to align our items end, right? Is that not it? What about justify items end? No? Why does this always have to confuse me so much? Let's look at the width here. So what I'm seeing, I think, is that this is not actually the full width of the thing. If I did like width 100%, it's still not the width of the full thing. Flex row. Maybe I need to do flex row in there. No. So what's the problem now? This is always a confusing thing with these UI frameworks for me, where I'm sort of like, even if you understand some of the stuff about how the CSS things work, it's like understanding how it all lines up with the framework's expectations are kind of hard. Like, I'm a little confused why this isn't the full width. Width 100%. Display flex. I mean, we should have that. What if I did display block? Just out of curiosity. Oops. Block. So now it's the full width, you see. If I did display flex, it's not the full width anymore. Self end. I wonder if that will help. No, it did not help. So like the parent element, this form, display block, form item, then this thing. I don't know. Kind of annoying. What I might just do instead is put in a spacer here. Class name, grow. And, you know, that does it. It's just kind of annoying. I don't really like having to put in these like empty elements. Okay, what? So here I just added an M4 and it moved it off somehow into the ether there. Okay, that's right though. And then we can also add a padding to, or not padding to, gap to. Yeah, like that. And really, we might do more like an M8. How does that feel? And a gap 4. Sure. I mean, seems all right. And the submit, I might actually, I wonder if it'll look weird if I make that a large size, large. Yeah, it does look weird. I mean, it could be aligned better, but it just feels strange. And we're going to keep that one as the primary. This delete will do variant destructive. Cool. And really, actually, maybe prefer this with just M4 like that. Yeah. And I almost want this add host name. Like I know here we have it like that, but I wonder if we want that over here instead. Let's just try it. Justify self start. Yeah, I kind of like that a little better. So it's just like not quite as many buttons in our face down here. And instead of submit, we'll call this save. And the delete site, honestly, I almost wonder if that should be over here instead. And that back over there like that. Let's try it. So that's easy to do just by moving our spacer, I think. So now delete site is over there. Save, we could call it save changes. So over here. And we can move the add host name back to justify end. Okay. Okay. So now we've got our form and it should work fine for the different things. Yeah. One thing, when we create a new site here, I kind of want it to actually start with an empty host name. But that's kind of weird. We don't want it to actually have an empty host name when it's saved. So we would sort of need to do that over here instead. And it might just not be worth the extra complexity. So I might do something where it's actually sort of like what is all this got? It's got everything. I might have something like field.value.length. Like that. Oh yeah, okay. Part of the reason I don't like using that and stuff, I usually prefer the ternary operators because there's a lot of stuff that's falsy, but then it's like it doesn't, it can still be rendered like a 0. It still gets rendered. If it's actually null, that's when it's like, it skips the whole thing basically. Okay, so now, we have our thing here. If we delete that, the actual host name title goes away and we just have this add host name button, which I kind of like. But I also wonder if I do this, like I almost want this to be something like CN I think CN is a thing I can import. And this would be field.value.length justify self end, otherwise empty string. Sure. So now, the add host name thing is nice and big, but then when you click it, it kind of goes off to the side. So it just makes it really clear. The first thing to do here is add your first host name. At least it's hopefully clear. Okay. Cool. So that's good. The next thing, I'm actually going to add a modal for the delete. So I don't think I've done that with ShadCN. Let's see how it works. So there's obviously dialogue. Is there anything else? Like alert dialogue, maybe. Okay. Sometimes there's like a generic dialogue component, and then there's also sort of like a specific dialogue component for these sort of like prompts, which I think is this alert dialogue thing. And let's just install it. So let's make a new tab here, install the thing. And then over here, like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how when you make a new tab, it's like it messes up the formatting on this. I don't really like that. This is my own tool, by the way, Weave, that I'm running these things in. So if it has bugs, I'm the only one to blame. I can only blame myself. Let's add this React Alert Dialog business here. Add alert dialog component. And that's it, right? Yeah. Cool. So now we will basically just copy this. And that's going to go here. And then we're going to start with our import from UI alert dialog, and then we'll import everything else. Just make sure they're all importing from the right place. Yep, because I got burned on that the other day. And then this delete thing is going in the alert dialog trigger. And right, because this is using a button in there. Yeah. And so then when does it like actually do the thing? Default open, open, on open change. Overlay content, cancel, action. What? So is there no on click or something here? There is. Can I just put that in there like that? Let's just see. Click. Delete site. Does that look right to you? Does that look like it's aligned with the other thing? I guess it must be. Yeah, okay, it is. Click it. Are you absolutely sure? Continue. It deleted it, right? If I do it again, it deleted it again. Okay, I guess that works. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, I want to change this create a site to width 100. width full, right? Full. Yeah. And it's, just being weird. Okay, it's still being weird. I'll just do it like this. Flex, justify, items, justify, items, stretch. And we could put the M4 on this one. Oh yeah, /div. Okay. Align, sorry. No, it still doesn't work. Oh, well, let's do it like this. So flex row. And then here we would do class name grow, right? Something like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Just want it to be nice and kind of big there. Okay, delete a site. And so if we go back here, this continue button, I also want it to have, can I have a variant? Not really. See, like, I don't really know how to use this. Class name. What the heck is color? Probably not something I want to use. Destructive. No. Let's see. There must be some documentation about this. Let's actually look at the button component here. Oh, so it's something like this. I wonder if I can... I wonder if I can use that or if that's just like out of my ability to use here. No. Okay. What about as child? I can do as child. And then I can do my button here. Destructive. Right? And add my on click on there. How does that work? Delete site. Doesn't work. I thought that would work. Does it still work if I click it? Let's take a look at this here. does. Is that class name messing with it, I wonder? Weird. Okay. I'm sure there's some way to do it. I just don't know what it is. Okay, well, whatever. Doesn't really matter that much. Let's just leave it for now like this. And so like what I could do is copy all of these, right? But it's like, do I really want to do that? Not really. Or what I could maybe do is actually go into the alert dialog here and like make a new one of these. Where is button variance coming from? Import button variance from UI button. Oh, it is exported here. Okay. I was thinking since it wasn't exported, we couldn't use it, but it's actually exported down here. Maybe we can use that. Let's try that. So if we do class name CN button variance variant destructive. Okay, that does it. Sweet. Got a spammer in chat. One sec. All right. They're banned. Okay. Anyway, so we finally figured out the button variance thing. That's good. And I might actually, well, it's fine like this. I was going to maybe add another class to the, or another component to the alert dialog file, but I'm just going to do it like this for now. And we will call this delete site. And we also need to actually update the text here. Delete let's put in the site name here, site.name. This action cannot be undone. This will permanently delete the site and all metrics associated with it. And let's put this down here. Okay. So now if I click delete site, delete unnamed site, this will permanently delete the site and all metrics associated with it. This action cannot be undone. I almost want to emphasize this a little bit. I wonder if I can strong it, or if that's just gonna do something weird. And then I might do something like a P. And another P. And save it, let it format itself. Okay. And let's just do it like this. Class name MB2. Sure. Delete me. Create me. Delete me. Cancel. Doesn't do anything. Click somewhere else. Doesn't do anything. Delete. It deletes it. Okay, great. Okay, let's commit our changes so far. So we have, let's commit this separately. Update, use, create site. Site to return created site. Data. Okay. Then here we will do this and this and this, and we will call it redesign and improve site management form. Sure. And I'll commit this as well. Update mockup with site form. And I'll commit this as well. Add weave example to README. Okay. Cool. So now we've got our site form here. This drop down, I'll probably disable if we don't have a site selected as well. So if we go to home, here we could say like, I don't know, let's disable it. Let's just set it to disabled for now. Disabled equals sites. You'd say like not sites dot length. So if there's no sites, that's disabled. And also for the home page here, like for this chunk of it, let's split this out. Let's make a new component here. We can call it site metrics.tsx and export const site metrics. Return. And what are we going to return? We're going to return all of this, basically. And we'll just wrap it in a fragment and do that. And so change aggregation type and num visits and num visitors. This is all stuff that's only actually needed down here now. Also app state and events. And aggregation type. And page table. Okay. think I need to refresh this. Why are you saying app state not defined? Oh, maybe I cut that and I should have just copied it. Yeah. Okay. Interesting that it's not showing that at all. Oh, I forgot to add it down here. So now down here, we would add basically in this, in the outer div, but not in the inner div, we're going to add our site metrics. Like that. Okay. But we're only going to render that if we have a site selected. So we would say app state dot site ID question mark site metrics. Otherwise, something. Otherwise, something. And I wonder if there's a useful component for like invalid state situations, or if you just kind of make your own. Don't really want alert. Don't really, I don't know if there's going to be any interesting blocks here. Maybe though. Actually, let's see. If we browse block, well, okay, no. Probably what we would want is really just a sort of a custom thing here. So like we could do a div and in here we could say create a site to get started. And maybe we could even say click the this in the top right and create a site to get started. Right? So wait, so what's going on here? So we don't have any sites, but appstate.siteID is still set to something. Maybe I need another one of these, like if not sites.length, or if not sites.find site.id equals appstate.siteID. So if the site ID is no longer present in the sites, or we already have that logic up here actually. So let's change this. Let's just say if not, or if sites dot length is less than 1. Okay, it doesn't like that because sites could be null. So we could just say if not sites.length and appstate.siteID, that appstate draft.siteID equals undefined. So what this is saying is if we have a site ID, but we don't have any sites, then that site ID is obviously wrong, but we're not going to hit this up conditional either because sites.length is greater than 0. So yeah, so that way it's like, it blanks out. And then it's like, hey, click the thing in the top right to get started. And I might actually just put the cog icon without the button. And this div class flex cog icon class name inline. Is that a class name? Yeah. And, you know, we could do like M2 or MX2. Yeah. And then let's do it like this. Do. P. Welcome to Nanalytics. You don't have any sites configured yet. To get started, and then a list, and actually I want that to be an ordered list. First, you're going to click the cog item in the top right to open. Let's just say that. And let's get rid of this. Okay. Then you will click strong create new site. Add one or more strong host names to your site. Metrics will only be associated with your site if they match the site's host names. Okay. I mean, that, I kind of, yeah, sure. Okay. The problem is now we need the pros thing for this probably is going to be the way to go. So if we do like class name pros, this is a thing in Tailwind. But for it to work, we need to install a plugin, if I recall. Where do I find that? Let's see. Tailwind typography. Yeah. So, you know, something like this. And maybe I'll kind of use that. Okay, so we just need to install it. Install this thing. And then we need to add the plugin line to our CSS file. Yeah. And then I think that should do it. I might need to restart my server though. Yeah, okay. Ta-da. And like these, I kind of wish this was better aligned with the text. Doesn't necessarily matter that much, but if I did like a class name Lex row justify center. No, that doesn't really help, does it? What if I did it down here? Div class name flex row. Let's just see what that does first of all. Fine. And then I guess it's align. I'll never get these right. Middle. No. That's vertical align middle. That's not really what we want. We want the items middle, items center. Yeah, like that. Okay, so then it's nice and aligned. Cool. And this whole thing, we will do a, like, I think if I do M auto, it'll center it. And MT8, just to give it some vertical space there. Okay, so now we kind of have a default state going on, right? Where the user opens the page for the first time and they actually see something useful that explains to them what to do. And they click the button and they create a new site. And then they add one or more host names. Save changes. And that should work. And let's just test this out too. So we'll call this localhost. And the host name will be localhost 3000. Save the changes. And close that. And so then if I open localhost 3000, or no, it's 8000, isn't it? So if I open localhost 8000, nothing should come up. But if I switch this to 8000 and save changes, and then refresh this, okay, something comes up. And since I refreshed it twice, I get 2 visits and 1 visitor. Yeah, seems to be working. Let's commit this. We could call this, let's do these 3 things as like add typography plugin. And then we could do add default state to homepage if user has no sites created. Cool. So we're working our way towards something here. Let me do a quick time check. 1:40. Okay, we got time. So the next thing we probably want to do is figure out this bit, okay? So let's look at our mockup. Doop, 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 doop. This one. We kind of want to figure out this part now. And yeah, I don't know, like that. I kind of want those buttons to all go away. Can I do that? View mode, yeah. Okay, so, you know, we can see sort of the main stuff at the top here is there. We've got the site select thing. We've got the look back chooser, and we've got the settings button, which I almost wish was a little bigger. I wonder if I can do that without it looking weird. No. Over here. Let me see. If I do size large, does that work? Doesn't really. Problem is it doesn't increase the icon size. I might just switch it actually to a secondary thing. So it's like a little bit more of a thing like that. Okay, fine. So now let's look at our site metrics here a little bit. And we kind of want to make it look like this, right? And this box around it, I don't know if we really need a box around the whole thing. I just included it in the mockup sort of for clarity's sake. And we'll see if that feels necessary once we actually have all of the stuff in it. But anyway, so we've got this top bar with visitors and visits, right? And we've got these buttons for visitors and visits. And that's a bit weird. First of all, let's do size large for these. LG. And I don't really want them to have rounded corners either. So I might have to do like a class name situation for that. Class name, brown, like what is the border radius thing for? Border radius, rounded none, I think is what we want. So let's do that. Rounded none. Same thing down here. Yeah, so now we've got, two perfectly square buttons here. And do we want maybe a little bit of gap between them? I'm not sure. Flex row, gap 2. How does that feel? Feels okay. I almost feel like if we have the gap, then maybe we do want them to stay rounded. Well, we'll see. And let's also do M2 on this. Or MY2. Yeah. Let's just do it like that for now. Okay. So now we want to add this this thing here, this line chart. So down here, we've got that page table. Let's make a new component and we will call it a I mean, what do we want to call it? Big line chart? Okay. Not in UI, no. In components, big line chart. And I might sort of copy this all and put it over here. Even though we're not going to be reusing much of that. It'll give us a baseline. And then we can import big line chart. Oh yeah, we got to rename this. Export const. Big line chart. Import it here. Yes, now I got two of those things, which is fine, but that's not what we want. So okay, so there's something here about the fact that we've got all this page aggregation data as well that we don't necessarily want to have to recalculate these in each component that needs it. So I want to add a hook for loading all of this aggregate data at once and only computing it once as well. But for now, we're just going to stick with what we've got here until we can kind of figure out what we want it to look like and what kind of data we want it to need, okay? And, you know, we don't need the div class name. It should actually be the full width. This is what we want it to look like, size-wise. And then let's look at our line chart documentation. Or area chart, I guess. Pardon me, area chart. I mean, we could do line, but I think area probably is better. Okay. And we want linear. We definitely don't want it to be all curvy, in my opinion, anyway. It might look cool with a gradient, though. So let's actually look at this one. Kind of complicated. Let's just copy all of this. And let's just put it down here. And then, so, you know, we don't really need the card parts of it, right? We're mostly just interested in the actual chart element, which starts with this chart container probably. Yeah, so let's copy all of this and put that here. And does it need to be in a div? Probably not. Okay. Okay, and then, yeah, let's just comment all this out so it doesn't confuse our IntelliSense and everything too much. And then all this stuff is going to be imported from UI chart. Same with this. No, see, that's not right. Let's undo that import. So this comes in from UI chart. This also should be coming in from what? Recharts. Recharts. These also from recharts. Yeah, let's just do it like that. Okay, so what do we got now? So there's, don't need that. Area chart, Cartesian grid, x-axis, check. Chart container, chart tooltip content. Check. Does that line up with what we have down here? Config, container, tooltip content. Area chart, Cartesian grid, x-axis. Yeah. Yeah, except why are we missing, what are we missing there? Chart, oh, chart config. Okay, fine. Okay. And so we need our config. I mean, you know, and we don't really need that actually because it's just junky. It's just like some testing stuff. I don't know if I can just get rid of that altogether, maybe. Nope, can't do that. What if I do that? Let's do... Where do these different things come from, I wonder? So like this has got desktop. I don't know. Let's just start. Let's actually include it. And then we can kind of clean up the example once we have something that actually works. But rather than try to be too clever at the beginning, it's probably a good idea to get something that works first, right? Okay. And then the chart data as well. Let's actually do the same thing here. We can just copy this, put it up here, get something that works. And this we'll need to import. Oh, I see. Okay, so this desktop and mobile are the two different keys of the data because this is a stacked chart. In our case, it's not a stacked chart. If I actually look at the code for this, yeah, it's just like the thing. So, you know, we would call this visits. Let's just call it visits for now. Label visits. And then this would be like visits. Dunk, 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 dunk. Oops, dunk, like that, right? And then like this mobile area we don't need. We just have this visits one. I guess this is fill visits, color visits. And here again, visits, visits, fill visits. Oh, I see. So these are the gradients. So that's kind of interesting. Linear gradient, SVG props. Okay. And we don't need the mobile one. So theoretically that is a thing. It's like this. That's cool. We also don't want it to be roundy. Roundy. So how do we turn that off? Type, probably this type. What are the options here? Linear would be my guess. Linear. Yep, like that. Okey-doke. And so now we need to, you know, actually put our real data in here, of course. And like if I look at the horizontal bar chart here, this is chart 2. I'm actually going to reuse chart 2 here as well, just because I want it to be the same color. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing is this is called visits, but it actually should be called either visits or visitors, depending on stuff. So this chart config, I'm going to put down here instead. And this visits thing we can keep. It doesn't really matter what that's called, and it's needed for some of these other values. So trying to change that would be annoying. But the label we can update to be like aggregation type equals visitors, visitors, visits. And that should be a capital V. Right? So now, you know, this says visitors. And if I switch it to this, now it says visits. Cool. So now we need to get it to actually use the right data, right? And got to figure out what that data is. Okay, so let's think here. Like, a lot of this we don't really need because we're aggregating by page, which isn't really what we want. So let's make some new aggregations here. So we would do, the other thing is we kind of need to decide. We've got this look back window here, right? Should this chart only be limited to that look back window? Or should it go back even further? Because these other things down here, we definitely want to be limited to the look back window, but maybe the chart could go back further. But for now, let's just assume that it's only the data within the look back window. Okay, so let's handle the simplest case first, which is visits. So we would do const. Then the other question is sort of like, how do we want to, like if we're aggregating it, what do we want to aggregate it by? In other words, what should the x-axis values be here? And, you know, maybe for 7 days, it's kind of obvious, like, well, it should be, each one is 1 day. If you do 1 day, maybe each one is 24 hours. If you do 30 days, maybe each one is 3 days. But trying to figure that out for each look back, especially if somebody's like actively, like once we allow this to be more flexible, like where somebody can pick different values in here, it's going to be hard to do that in a hard-coded way. So we kind of want to do a generic thing here. And what that probably means is we need to divide the look back window into a certain number of buckets. Like say we do 10 buckets. So let's just do this first. Num buckets, let's say 10. Okay. And then like the kind of data this is looking for, an array of objects. So we would do like const chart data equals, and let's comment this out for now. We're going to do num buckets, or let's do it like this. Chart data is like that, and then we're going to do for let I equal 0, I less than num buckets, I plus plus, just a traditional for loop here. We're going to say chart data I equals and then we would have like a date, which is something. And of visits, which is the number of visits within that bucket. And maybe I'll do something like this. Like if we do chart data is that const start date equals app state dot look back, which is a number of days. So let's actually start with end date. Const end date equals date dot now, right? And then start date is end date dot, or no, let's do new date. End date dot set day, set date, app state dot look back with a negative, right? Is there like an add? No. Set date, end date dot date minus app state dot look back. And does this, that mutates the date object, right? I wonder if there's a better way to do it. Like if I do date dot, or if I do date, like new date, so like somebody could use this, but let's not. Let's just do it this way. And we can do const start date equals new date. Because I think this mutates the start date, right? And then let's do console.log start date and end date. Simple enough. Kind of just want to make sure that we're thinking about this right, because the JavaScript date stuff can be a little bit crazy. So look back 30 days. So our start date is July 14th or July 24th, which, okay. And our end date is August 23rd. I mean, it's kind of right, but it's also one day off kind of, but I think that's how it's supposed to be. So that seems fine. If I switch it to 365 days, August 23rd to August 23rd, that's good. The thing is, not all months are 30 days, right? So that's why it's one day off. 7 days, 23rd to the 16th. Yeah, seems fine. One day, 22nd to the 23rd. Anyway, yeah, so that looks like it's working, right? So now we have our start date and end date for each of our buckets. And here we will say const bucket size width equals end date dot get time minus start date dot get time divided by num buckets. Right? Something like that. Okay. So we could also log that maybe. Console.log. Well, let's not. Okay. So now for each of these buckets, I'm probably going to want to track both the start date and, well, probably can just do the start date here. Let's do both. Let's do start date is something and end date is something. And start date here is going to be start date new date start date dot get time plus bucket width times I, right? Oh, one sec. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, let me just text this person back real fast. Okay. Okay, so our start date is this, right? So if we think about the very first bucket here, I is going to be 0. So our start date is just going to be start date.getTime plus bucket with the time 0. So it's just going to be the start date, which makes sense. And it's going to go up from there. And the end date is going to be that times I plus 1. All right. Simple as that. So here we kind of are building these buckets. And I might also set something like number, or let's just call it count, is 0. Because it could, depending on the aggregation type, it could be the count of visitors or it could be the count of visits. So I don't want to call it visitors or visits. I'm just going to call it count. Okay, so now we need to iterate through all of our events and put them in the right buckets, if that makes sense. So how are we going to do that? What's the best way? I mean, the simplest way, let's just do something simple here. Const event of events. Events or empty array. And we'll base this off the event start time. So we'll say what will we say? If event.start time is less than, I'm kind of trying to avoid a nested for loop here. So one of the ways we could avoid a nested for loop is sorting the events by start time and then grouping them, partitioning them. And I'm sure there's some kind of algorithm for that, but I'm actually just going to do a nested for loop for now. To do improve algorithm to avoid nested for loop. And so we're actually just going to do like this again. And really we could do for const bucket of chart data. Nope, chart data. If event.start time is greater than, or let's say if it's less than bucket dot end date dot get time. And maybe these should just be, the thing is, I think I want these to be dates for the sake of my chart, but I'm not a huge fan of calling this get time function again and again, but I don't think that really matters that much. Anyway, it's just like accessing a property, right? It doesn't have to calculate anything. So anyway, in this case, then the event goes into that bucket, right? So we would say bucket dot count plus equals 1, and break, which will break the inner for loop. Right? So it goes into that bucket, breaks the inner for loop, then it goes back to the outer for loop, does the whole thing again. If the start time is less than the end date, we don't really need to check the start date because of the way we're iterating through the chart data in order. I think that is right-ish, right? So here, let's update the stuff here. So we're actually going to call this count instead of visits. And if we look for visits down here, this would be like fill count. Let's just do color count, count, fill count, color count. And instead of months, we're going to use start date. I don't know if we really want to use start date versus end date here. I'm not sure which would feel the most intuitive. Let's see, any instances of month there? No, okay. So maybe that will kind of work. Value.slice is not a function. Oh, it doesn't like this. I mean, really, this would be something like, do we know what value is here? It doesn't know. Okay. Value dot get or toString. Let's just say for now. Right. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, that kind of works-ish, right? Kind of works-ish. Really, this value is like super long. So each of these things is taking up way too much space. If I just did, what if I did this? Just out of curiosity. Yeah. So now we actually have these. And that actually looks great, kind of. But it's sort of confusing as well because they're not sequential days. It just happens to look like days. Really what we want is like to convert this to like a really terse string. Let's see. Didn't I run into this problem somewhere else, like with dates here? Oh my god, no, not that. Not really. So, I mean, what I could do is something like I want to just format it, right? Date to string. I think I want something like this. To locale string. And maybe if I do this, I'll get some better autocomplete here. Yeah. Okay, so to locale string. Undefined object. And here could be like, I don't know, let's just see what we got for now. Okay, we got that. And I mean, really, you know, probably just doing the year, month, day. Is what I'm thinking here. Like year, 2-digit, month, 2-digit, day, 2-digit. Yeah. Seems fine. And, you know, like this is 30 days, so the buckets are a little bit weird. And maybe we could dynamically adjust the buckets and stuff. If we switch it to 7 days, though, it's still going to work. It's just going to have buckets of less than 1 day each. Kind of odd, but I think this is actually pretty close to what we want. We can just sort of adjust those aspects of it. Okay, so let's commit our changes, and then I'm going to wrap up here. Let's commit this separately, I guess, like make settings icon a bit more visible. Settings button. Okay, and the other thing is, let's go back here. So this page is for chart. Like we're not using this. We're not using this or any of this. Oh yeah, and I should, well, let's get rid of these comments too. I need to update this aggregation thing to also be based on visitors instead of visits, right? Like right now, this is just purely visits. So like this has 2 here. If I switch to visitors, it still says 2, but it should say 1. So probably the way to do that, actually, if I go back to this horizontal bar chart, or not the horizontal bar chart, back to the page table, and well, I don't know. Let's just write it ourselves here. So like if aggregation type equals visitors, we're going to do something else. Else, we're going to do this. Okay, so what are we going to do for visitors? Well, we're going to iterate over something, but instead of events, it's going to be actually, let's do it like this. Visitors, new set. And let's actually get rid of this. And down here, we would say like, if aggregation type equals visitors, else blah. So here we're saying if it's visits, then we'll always increment the count. If it's visitors, we're going to conditionally increment the count. If not bucket dot visitors dot has event dot user ID. So if it doesn't have this user ID, then bucket dot visitors dot add event dot user ID and increment the count. So we only increment the count if it doesn't have it, and we also add it at the same time. Okay, so now I think that should work, where visitors is just 1, and visits is 2. Yes. Okay, great. And we got rid of all of the kind of weird code in there. Only the stuff we actually need. Cool. Let's go ahead and commit that as well. Add area chart of visitors visits over time. Cool. I guess let's just commit this update notes. All right, let's quit that thing. Let's push our changes. And with that, I think we're going to be done for the day. Thanks, y'all. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.